Hey everybody, my name is Daryl and this is Dion.
Hello.
Welcome to Where We Stand, a series where we talk about the games we've recently played and discuss how much we may or may not have enjoyed them. Today we're talking about Psychonauts, which is available for the PC, the original Xbox, and PlayStation 2. If you have either of those laying around, maybe feel free to go see if you can find it somewhere to pick up, if you like what you hear. We will be discussing well, there are aspects of this game that are kind of disgusting when you really think about it. Anyway, we will be discussing spoilers. Now that we're cured up and ready to go, let's get started with our series overview and how we came to know Psychonauts from the jump. If you want to start, Dion?
Sure. So, series overview for me personally, I played Psychonauts during childhood, and no, I did not beat it because I didn't beat games as a kid, and this did not. And I do see why after playing through, which we'll talk about later. But it was definitely one that had a big impact on me as a kid. I just really liked the game. I thought it was a really cool idea. I like how it really puts the theme and really pushes it. And as a kid, it was just such an enjoyable experience, even though I wasn't able to finish the game.
Okay. And in my case, I was just generally familiar with it. Like back in the days, I think the first time I saw it was back during the days when G4 TV used to air X-Play.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, see, I'm showing my age here, but that's when I remember seeing it. I remember Adam Sessler specifically talking about the game for a little bit, and that just occurred to me now. Wow, that's a memory.
Adam Sessler, Morgan Webb.
But I was familiar with it from there, and I didn't have an Xbox, and I don't know why it didn't occur to me to just get it on PlayStation 2 if I was interested. I don't know. I think the game probably creeped me out a bit when I was a kid for obvious reasons. I wasn't.
Not obvious reasons.
Really not obvious reasons? I thought the game was kind of creepy from my perspective when I was a kid. These days, no. But then I was like, I don't know. There's something unsettling about this, and I don't know what it is yet. But either way around, I've seen it around here and there since, until recently. Even some of my coworkers have mentioned, "Hey, this is a really cool game. You should play it." And then we decided, "Hey, we should probably play it." And so I played it. That's my experience with the game. Just seen it for years, never booted it up myself. Moving along, we're going to talk about the general story overview of Psychonauts. So in Psychonauts, you play as Raz, or his full name is Rasputin. He's a young boy gifted with I almost said psychotic. Some characters in this game are definitely psychotic. But he's a young boy gifted with psychic abilities who runs away from the circus where he grew up. His parents are, his dad specifically, did he ever mention his mom?
Yeah, I don't know about his mom.
Yeah. But his dad runs a circus, and he was raised in a circus. But he ran away to try and sneak to a summer camp with other kids with gifted abilities in the psychic realm and whatnot. Their goal is to become Psychonauts, which are basically spies with psychic abilities. He finds that there is a sinister plot occurring at the camp that only he can stop. Seriously, only him. Go figure. The game is centered on exploring the strange and imaginative, I can say words, minds of various characters that Raz encounters as a psychonaut in training, or a psych cadet as they call them, to help them overcome their fears, traumas, memories of their past, so as to gain their help and progress throughout the game so you can beat the big bad at the end. Raz gains use of several psychic abilities during the game that are used for both attacking foes and solving puzzles, and in some cases just completely cheating the level. I've done it a few times. It's fun.
I have not, but we can talk about that in gameplay because I'm interested to hear. But I just want to highlight some major story points, and we can say that the game is not. I don't think story was the main drive. I think they did an okay job for a kid's story. It's great, I think, but for an older player, it's not as enticing. But
the setup is definitely there.
Yeah, so you kind of start out. You go into Coach Alexander. Oleander. You go to his mind, and you go through his mind, and that's kind of your introduction to, wow, this is psychic world. And then after you complete that, you're kind of thrown into the camp where you can kind of explore, figure out the world because you're still kind of learning. You're known to be pretty. After Coach Alexander's mind is done, they know you're strong, so you start doing some, secret missions, and they get you into other people's minds. So throughout the game, you're just jumping in everyone's head, which is an interesting mechanic, I would say. In the beginning of the game, it was just, you're like, oh, you're learning these skills, and that's why you're jumping every head. I thought it was a very simple setup. I didn't dislike it, but it definitely just gets you from point A to point B to me.
Yeah, it's serviceable enough. The various agents at the camp who serve as the instructors / teachers, whomever you want to say, these characters being Sasha 9, Mila Vodello, I don't know how to say her last name, and Coach Oleander. They serve as the instructors of the camp and take interest in Rasputin when he sneaks in and they're like, okay, we gotta get rid of him. Oleander tries to get rid of him, but he can't get in Rasputin's head. Rasputin has like a very natural built defense in his mind, and that gains him some insight and some interest among the instructors, even though his dad is on the way to come pick him up. That's the overall goal of the game, by the way. You want to Rasputin wants to become a Psychonaut essentially as fast as he can before his dad takes him back to the circus, because he, in Rasputin's mind, doesn't think his father approves of Psychonauts and whatnot, and thinks he's a freak. It's surprisingly touchy of a subject when you really think about it. The whole being accepted by your parents for who you are or what you want to be kind of thing.
Yep. And so after you've gone into these different coaches' minds, then you find out that people are kind of losing their brains. I mean,
they're losing their minds.
They're losing their brains literally. The brains are literally getting sucked out of their head.
Well, sneezed out most of the time.
Oh, sneezed out. True. It's actually a sneeze, which is, if your brain's coming out that easy, I have issues. But that is what was happening. So you go on an adventure to figure out where some of these kids are, because some of them go missing. Specifically, your love interest, who we'll talk about a little bit later. And so you go after that character, and you find up on an island where the secret experiments are happening, where they're getting the kids to sneeze out their brains, where they're testing the brains for power. So you go through that castle is pretty much your whole next step, and you're going through like 5 brains in that castle, which they're very interesting levels. But that's pretty much it. And then you find your love interest and Coach Oleander, who you get to invade his mind in the end, right?
Yep.
And then then you have a pretty good fight there, and these events, they literally still just move you. I don't feel like they have huge impact for me until the end. And basically, in the end, once you feed them, and then your father reveals that he is not who you thought he was, and he has his own psychic powers, and he's super strong too. And you become a Psychonaut. So boom, boom.
Yep. Raz's father, at the end of the day, simply just wanted to keep Raz out of trouble and keep him safe. He never actually said that he, hated psychics or didn't approve of Raz wanting to go to the camp and whatnot. Well, he probably didn't approve, but he didn't say it in a nasty way, you know what I'm saying? It's just how Raz interpreted it, and that created that image in his mind of what his father is. But that aside, I personally, overall with the story, thought that the story was serviceable for what it was, for just getting you from one place to the other, from point A to point B. Story was not the strong point of it. It definitely had fun. It definitely had some funny dialogue here and there. If we're talking about just characters and how and the flavor's delicious, but the story itself is not trying to tug at your heartstrings or anything like that. It's like, we know what kind of game we are. We know we're silly. Here's a goofy setup. There you go. And that's all you really need to get going with the game. Yeah,
and I think, honestly, it's all it's needed, because the other parts really carry it. Let's spend a few minutes talking about characters here. Obviously, we've talked about Rasputin. He is, I think, one of the key aspects you need to know about him is his ability. So his family is super powerful in general. That's why his dad's super powerful. So he is gifted, pretty much. He's really strong. He can accomplish going through all these minds and he's pretty much at, I would almost say, the level of the other agents going through the world, like, very quickly. He really picks up. I mean, 6 months? I don't even know if the game's 6 months long. It's very quick.
It's the summer, so I think it's actually less than 6, but I'm not sure.
2 months?
Roughly 3 max. I think that one of the key aspects about Raz is that he's, like you said, he's gifted and he has an arsenal that he doesn't realize he can tap into just yet. It's something that everyone can learn, but he has a higher aptitude for it, I guess you could say. But the problem is he doesn't have the experience for it, and he can be pretty bullheaded. That's what gets him screwed over when he bites off more than he can chew. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, you can't really see that. You don't really get that. It's like, hey, you don't have this ability yet. You should come over here so we can teach you this ability and whatnot, which is all well and good. Again, it's a vehicle for just moving the game along. The name of the game is gameplay, but we'll get to that in a bit. We said what we had to say about Rasputin. Honestly, first of all, very iconic character design. I'm gonna put that out there real quick about Rasputin.
Yes.
If you see him anywhere on any poster, you know that's Psychonauts. If you even see his goggles, you'll know it's Psychonauts. The game has style.
Except for the ending is interesting because how his everything changes for him because he gets the Psychonaut suit.
Yeah, I hated it.
Okay, I agree. So let's talk about...
Get him out of that turtleneck. Give him his jacket back and his old turtleneck. That's all I'm asking. Anyway.
Let's hit on the agents of power here. Sasha 9 and... Oh gosh, I'm gonna mess this up. Mila?
Yeah, Mia Valdello. I can't remember how to say your full name. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to throw
Well, Sasha and Mia is all good. First names is all good. So Sasha, very mysterious, very, I would say, cool would be the word I'd use. I don't know what other word to go with here. He just has that. He reminds me of a very much a regular agent. Black glasses, suit. He gives that whole vibe, almost like the Matrix.
You can't really trip him up. In fact, his mind is a controlled box, as he put it, and it really is just one big old box, one big cube, because he keeps everything sorted and under control, venting out when needed. But that's how he keeps himself cool.
Right, and then Mila, who's pretty much his partner in crime here, and they go on missions for Director Ford. Get to him in a minute. And they work together. She's the best levitation master in the Psychonauts as a whole. That was completely established. And they've gone on missions together. And you kind of learn about that as you go through their brains and their levels. And then the great and one and only Coach Oleander.
He reminded me of Mr. Krabs, and I don't know why. Might have been his face. I'm not sure. But yes, you had Coach Oleander, and now you have Coach Oleander, who is revealed, I'm going to say put that way, who is revealed to be the antagonist of the game later, because you really don't have one for at least half-ish of the game.
Yeah, you don't know
really
who it is.
Yeah, you don't. And I'd argue that nothing's really even going wrong for a little bit until a little while you're studying under Sasha 9. By then, as soon as Sasha 9 gets that call that he needs to go check out some stuff on some Psychonauts business, that's when you realize something's going wrong. But before that, you're just getting used to the kids around the camp and whatnot, who, by the way, if you're wondering why we haven't mentioned any of the kids yet, it's because only literally one of them matters.
That person.
Yeah, we'll get to her later, but the others, they're fun to chat with in passing here and there, but they're not really noteworthy. But anyway, Coach Oleander is the game's eventual antagonist. I'm trying to think of a good way to put this. Now that I think about it, why did he? He wanted to collect all the kids' brains to form his own Psychonauts army, essentially outside of Psychonauts. So he wanted to essentially found his own organization, albeit the most twisted way you can.
Exactly.
But I'm trying to remember why, because I don't think it had anything to do with his childhood trauma of his father killing his pet rabbit or bunny, because his father was a butcher. And didn't like little measly rabbits and always killed his rabbits. I don't know. Maybe he was just unhinged, and the difficult childhood that ties into that probably just made him want that kind of power trip at some point to actually control something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. The game doesn't really go into much detail about that, but you do learn his backstory and whatnot, and you realize he's just He just needs a hug.
I mean, that's how it comes down to in the end of the game.
It really is at the end of the day. But he's a fun character. I just had a hard time trying to connect. Like, wait, why did this? I never questioned that. Why did that happen again?
I can't tell you. I just know he's very upfront. He's a very, he's very.
He's a drill
vocal.
sergeant, essentially.
Very much. That is him to a T. And then Ford Crueler, who is, I think probably one of the most interesting characters in the game for me.
Oh, definitely.
He used to be the greatest leader of the Psychonauts, but after he had a huge duel with someone that we don't know who, he kind of got cognitive dissociation. This is gosh, cognitive dissociation. Oh gosh,
cognitive dissociative.
Cognitive dissociative disorder. So he got cognitive dissociative disorder after this big duel, and if he's not next to the psychic rock, the home of the Psychonauts, he loses his mind, and he becomes one of his other personalities, which are one's like a person just cleaning. You got a person that cooks burgers. Like literally, he has these different personalities that he is if he's not close enough to the main rock. So he has to actually send everyone else out now, and he can't be using his full powers outside of the area. Though he is still very strong, and he's the strongest Psychonaut. If you attack him in his home base, you're done for. If you don't, it's kind of weird. But they kind of lead you on throughout the whole game about this, which I thought was really cool. Like his whole mystery about him is interesting.
He's definitely one of the most more interesting characters in the cast, especially since he also serves as not your tutorial dude, but like a lot of games used to do this back in the day, where if you wanted help, you just click the certain button. In this case, he loves bacon. Who doesn't? You select this bacon item, and then you kind of wave it by. Raz would wave it by his ear, and then he would appear, and if you need help, he'll give you a tip. Not always helpful tips, because sometimes he'll just say the overarching goal. But besides that, he's there to help Raz out.
I would say he was very useful for me, but
he was very. Yes, I'm not saying he wasn't. He was very useful. He was very useful.
You need a guide because this game. That's all.
I'm thinking about one specific part when I say that he wasn't very helpful. But we'll get to that. Okay. Yeah, we'll get to that later. That's definitely within the gameplay portion. It had to do with me finding the gun.
True.
But
let's hit on that didn't come
out. Yeah, don't. She's
Let's
12.
talk about Lily. So Lily, I don't think we're gonna talk about her long. She is the love interest. She has a little bit more personality than the other kids. This is why we brought her up on this list. She's the daughter of the Grand Head of Psychonauts, which I think is probably the biggest point about her, to be honest with you, because that kind of sets you up with the cliffhanger at the end of this game that the Grand Head of the Psychonauts got kidnapped.
Yep.
Or killed, one of the two. So you're going to go after them. And I think that's the biggest piece of Lily. I mean, she's not really anything else special. I mean, unless you had anything else.
She's pretty one-dimensional. If you remember, I don't want to say. I was gonna say if you remember, like if anyone out there watching has ever watched Rugrats, she's kind of like a less bratty version of Angelica. Actually, no, not Angelica. She's more of let's go with Hey Arnold. Yeah, I'm showing my age here. Hey Arnold with Helga. That's who she reminds me of. Just less mean.
I agree. I just hope everyone could get that reference. But
essentially, okay, for you anime lovers, she's a tsundere. But besides that, she's hot and cold. She acts mean to Raz, but she actually really likes him, and he's dense because of course he is. The guy with this biggest brain, arguably, is dense.
Yeah,
figure.
Makes sense. That's what happens every time, right?
Moving on, we could talk about setting. Though.
All right, let's talk about setting is a weird one, which is why I didn't fill out this outline great. In this game, it's definitely level based, so you're going to different places. With an overworld, I don't want to call it an open world because that does open world not justice. But it's overworld where you kind of explore different parts. So you have Whispering Rock Psychic Camp. That's the main location of the game where you're in the camp, and then you have, you go underwater for a slight bit, which is I think pretty cool for that year. The year the game was made, I actually think the underwater setting was very interesting. Too long, but interesting.
Oh yeah, it was long.
And then you have like the island. So those are your three. The island was really cool, especially towards the end when they're climbing up. And I thought they're all pretty good design. They're not anything special necessarily as of these days. But it was a good design world, and I don't even know. I'm trying to remember what was coming out during that time. It's probably not a lot of options that have these kind of open worldish places that you can go, and it was a 3D world, so it was cool. I think the biggest thing is that the theme is really all the way throughout everything, and when you go into the mines are really interesting. They're all different, and they kind of reflect, they do reflect each character and who they are. Like Mila having the little dance party, Oleander having a war-torn field that you have to go through, and Sasha was just a box, which I hated that level the most, but it was cool. Like, they really had a lot of variety in the levels, and I think that was a strong point in the game. Using, of course, going into people's minds makes it they could do almost anything, and they took advantage. I wish we went into Ford Crueller's mind. I think that would have been very interesting, but maybe that's for number two.
I feel like we would just get erased if he stepped too far from the rock.
True.
Did you want to move on to gameplay or anything like that? I can give my quick. Actually, let me give my quick opinion on the setting. Setting is everything that Dion said. I don't really have anything substantial to really add to that portion outside of I wasn't expecting the locations to be as varied and relate to gameplay nearly as much as, well, it did. Like, I expected, like, I'd say that, okay, fine. You're going to have some other settings. We are traveling to people's minds, but outside of Coach Oleander's and one or two others, once you start visiting some of the other minds, like some of the kids, I think you do, it's at least one or two of the kids. I don't remember. As well as what I'm going to call the boss rush in a way that you have at the end of the game, because you have to go through 5 mines before you can continue on the 3 mines. 3. Yeah,
it
3.
Feels like 5.
It felt like 5, but that little mini boss rush run, they all had their own gameplay mechanic tied to them, and that's the part I didn't expect, and that's what made me enjoy those settings more or less, depending on what the settings were. I do have my favorites. I liked.
What was your favorite? That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, my the one that stands out the most to me was dang it, what's his name? The dude who's too lazy to beat Napoleon.
Oh, I don't remember his name. I know what you're talking about, and you got to go the war.
Yeah,
that was super cool.
You're essentially playing the first game that came to mind was Civilization, but that style of game. You know what I mean?
It's a very simple version, but it's still super cool because you got to go big and small. The enemies sucked because the enemies were actually kind of difficult over there a little bit, but other than that, it was really cool. I think I did like the one where you're fighting the bull. I did like that one.
That was cool.
That was cool.
I enjoyed
my favorite has to go to the milkman. Oh,
yo, no, not the.
Dude.
That was great, but I can't listen to the milkman's lines anymore because they're so it's not bad flat, but it's more like I just can't help but make fun of him. You cannot stop me, not until I delivered the milk.
Yeah, and I mean that level super. It has like those repetitive, I guess, sayings during it too.
Yeah, but it's so funny.
It's just how they melded that in the level. It's just super cool, and how you're like transverse through this weird map and it has holes in it, and you got to get these different pieces to blend in. I was sold.
It was very innovative
sold
for what it was first time.
So favorite level. All right, so I won't hold you on setting anymore. I want to go gameplay. I know you want to, but I do want to kick off the gameplay. I just really have to say, and I think this is the main point of the game for me that really made it successful. The theme, the psychic theme, they just pushed it hard, and they didn't care if it was kind of silly or if it was more serious, but they pushed that theme all the way throughout the game. The way you attack people, the way your abilities work, the way you go into mines, the way the world's designed, like everything exudes the psychic theme. And I thought that was super cool. Like no other game for me has just had a theme and really pushed it so hard that it made it like, okay, this world makes sense because this is the theme and they're following it to a T. Like you're literally a psychic secret agent, and that is the theme of the game.
Yeah, and it's funny that we have to actually point that out because there are a lot of games out there that forget what they are sometimes and decide to go a completely different route, or they remember what they are, but the gameplay doesn't center around it. So it's really nice and refreshing to play a game here and there like Psychonauts. That's like, we're a game about psychics. We're also playing as psychics. Also, your abilities are psychic related. All of them. From your double jump to how you attack people. Like that's all there. There were abilities in there that I didn't think had to be there, like setting people on fire with your mind. But there you go. You could do that. Moving on from that point, I want to talk a bit about the skills and abilities that you can unlock, since I just mentioned fire as one of them. It's funny because the game at first doesn't really force you to unlock these abilities.
At all.
At all. You can miss, like, if you want to get that thing in the distance that you want to collect or something like that in a level, or you want to get to a certain point, then you're going to have to figure out, okay, what kind of ability am I going to need and whatnot. I remember there was one point where I needed the pyrokinetic, I think, ability. I can't remember what it's called. But I needed the fire ability to burn through something. And the game didn't tell me that's what I needed. I was actually in the milkman's mind. In the graveyard, because the thorns were covering the vines, thorns, whatever, were covering the door, and I'm like, I need to burn those, but the game didn't tell me I needed to burn them. It just said, it probably would have if I didn't have the ability, maybe, but if it didn't, then you kind of have to piece that together yourself. That, hey, I need the fire ability, meaning I need to go get this upgrade, so I need to collect these figments and psychic cards, and spend those little mental arrowheads on what I need to like one of the like a psychic core. I believe you need a psychic core, right?
Yep.
You need at least 9 psychic cards and a psychic core to gain a new rank. And once you gain enough ranks or whatever, or however many you need, then you talk to Ford Color, who will be like, "Yep, you got it. Now we're gonna enter your mind real quick, and you're gonna learn how to use this ability."
Yep.
It's really interesting that the game doesn't really seem to force the abilities on you unless you really need it.
Yeah.
In that moment.
And it kind of makes you think about the games of old. They didn't used to handhold you, and this game just doesn't half the time.
No.
It just says, good luck.
It's like, pay attention.
You get to figure out what skills you need to use, and you could really get stuck. Versus like games now, they really push you, you know what I mean? So
a lot of games these days really hold your hand, and that's a bittersweet feeling for me.
And I did want to hit on how the figments are kind of float around. Again, the psychic theme here, you're probably like these figments of the imagination to level up. So that's like your big level up. And the psychic cards, which is a big part of psychic, I guess history, or if you want to call it, I guess, the theory for that stuff. It's a big piece of it. Let's talk a little bit more about traversing the world. This is very quick. I just put this in here because I think it's just important to know. It's mostly on foot. With a few exceptions. You got some boat. I see I put feety there. You guess you have boat. A boat, you go by swallowed fish. And levitation is like an ability that kind of helps you move faster, which is, by the way, what a cool way to implement levitation. It's not like you're like on a ball and you're like using it to jump. That is really cool and really creative.
Which would make sense when you really think about it, because I'm sure if someone didn't have psychic abilities, they wouldn't know you're standing on a ball or sitting on one of your own mental energy.
Yeah, didn't even think about that. Maybe it was actually invisible to others, and that makes that then makes sense that you're levitating on a ball of energy, and it jumps, and it's super cool. You race with it, which is cool. And then I think we should talk slightly about combat.
Yeah. So you have a basic 1-2-3 combo for your melee attack, but you also have, because a lot of platformers with action abilities, you also have a slam down, which if you've played Ratchet and Clank, you have your 1-2-3 jump slam. That's what you can do. But unlike Ratchet and Clank, your arsenal is much more limited when it comes to combat. So you also, outside of that, you can again burn people with your mind, but you might not want to do that because you'll end up standing still while something's charging at you, potentially. You have one of the earliest abilities you get is being able to fire a mind beam or something like that.
Yep, it's like a gun, pretty much.
Essentially. And you can aim that with a lock on, or you can just fire that off on its own, just blind fire it. And blind firing is actually pretty decent sometimes if you're looking in that direction of the enemies you want to fight. Which, by the way, the enemies in the game are typically the most common ones you get are going to be sensors, which is, if you enter someone's mind and you're not supposed to be there, then the mind's going to try and censor you out because you're not supposed to be there. That's what those common enemies are. Besides that, you have other major bosses and whatnot that are of those worlds and whatnot. I'm not gonna lie, I got heavy Persona vibes. Despite Persona, when I got to Persona 4 and 5 and 3 and whatnot, that was long after this. This game came out in 2005. So 3 was barely out yet, I don't think. But anyway, coming back to this, you have an arsenal of abilities that you have to use that are situational. Some bosses are going to require some more thought and patience, like the one boss that was essentially a rolling tank, not Oleander's boss at the end, but the other one in the other level. I can't remember which one that was, but yeah, essentially, go ahead.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you essentially have to hide behind pillars, let it try and find you. At one point, it's going to get frustrated and get up on, I'm going to say all fours, but not really all fours. It's a tank. It's going to lean upwards. And then you have to take that opportunity to poke your head out and shoot it with a mind beam. You can't burn it. You can't use telekinesis on it, which, by the way, I've tried to use telekinesis on so many things to see if that was a quick way to solve my issue.
It is not, ever. It's never the answer, by the way.
It's not. Like you might be able to like stall for a little bit at best, but that's it. Telekinesis is mostly used for stuff in the environment or towards the end of the game when Raz's mind and Oleander's mind are kind of mingling together in the brain tank, and their psyche started overlapping, and you have to hold Oleander's little pet bunny up in the air, which aggravated me because I pet peeves. Not going to talk about that right now. That's a different story for a different day.
I know what you're talking about. Continue.
Yeah. Since you know, real quick.
Well,
well, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. It's simply just one of those things of you have to hold something up, or you have to hold something in place while you wait for the AI to get to you. Meanwhile, you're getting your ass beat, waiting for him to come up and help you out, essentially. Well, that's what annoys me.
The annoying part was that you had to try to traverse to him quickly before he died, which, my goodness.
Every time he picked up the damn rabbit and he said, "I got you, wee!" and he flew up to the next platform, and then I'm like, "Don't you put that rabbit back down?" He puts the rabbit back down. I'm like, "You put the rabbit down, and now you gotta chase it again, and now I'm gonna have to like parkour." Which, by the way, real quick, platforming in this game is a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. It's not always easy. You can shortcut it. I did shortcut it towards the end when I had in that same level, actually, when you had to grind rail all the way down to the platform. I just jumped and levitated.
Oh my goodness. I can't believe you.
What? You actually grinded?
Yes, I grinded. I didn't even think about jumping. Oh, we're not going to get into this.
I tried grinding. But for some reason, when I jumped in and tried to jump the gap to get to the next rail, it just sent me flying. I was on one life left with how many times I've tried to get the sharp turn down. True. I was like, screw it, and I jumped.
I do want to give the game a couple negatives on the gameplay, though. The controls.
Go ahead.
The controls, especially during that last level with the water rising. The controls with the parkouring, that stuff is not great. Like it could have been a lot tighter. And also when you're like doing the aiming and you try to lock on, just forget it. Like it just isn't good.
It's better to just blind fire.
That was some of the negatives I had. And it was minor. I mean, obviously I still beat the game, and I still think it's a good game, but you just prepare for those. The game is from 2000 whatever, and the controls aren't great.
Yeah. But that's all I had to say about gameplay.
Same.
You got anything else to say about it?
No, okay. The same thing. I think it's pretty good in general and just has a few negatives. So I think it's time to go ahead and give our closing thoughts.
Can do.
So I'll start it off because I believe we're closer today. So for me, I think the game was good, and I knew this going in because I've played a good portion of it. I think I got to the milkman. That's probably where I stopped as a kid. And I love the theme. I just think it's super cool and super enjoyable. I like that you're kind of like in this. You're like a kid in the camp trying to learn psychic powers. I wish that part extended for longer, but I really enjoyed that. I like that it was challenging to figure out puzzles. I think that is also really cool. And I did like how the combat, getting the skills and abilities, they all work together to inform the theme of the game. And I think that's the strongest part of the game. And then I'll ding some points for the story being, simple. It's nothing too crazy. It works with the game, but it's nothing super special. And the characters are the same. They're usually one-dimensional with a few standouts. And Oleander, Ford, and I would say our main character are probably the biggest ones. And the agents, you could give them a little plus. And then obviously I mentioned the controls were not the best, but other than that, I think it's definitely worth playing. I'm excited for the sequel that I'm going to force you to play, and I can't wait. So that's how I felt.
Okay, on my end, I was genuinely surprised with how much I enjoyed Psychonauts. Obviously, I had a feeling that I'd at least like it, but the game did a lot of clever things gameplay-wise that still hold up very well today. That's one of the reasons I was a little worried when I bought it on Steam. I'm like, oh no, are you going to be like other Steam games or other games from like 2005 or a little earlier where I try and boot you up and it's just like, nope, I don't want to work, or this control scheme is outdated. No, it actually very, very well still holds up to this day. All I would say is you might have to fix your screen resolution on that note. But if that's the only problem that I got to deal with, then I'll deal with it. That's fine. If you could stomach the dated visuals, despite its stylistic style, repetitive on a technical level, rather than the style itself, then I'd say give it a whirl. I'm also looking forward to the sequel whenever that inevitably drops. And by the way, Dion, my coworker actually mentioned that there's like a VR game that's like an in-between between 1 and 2. So if we want to watch that on YouTube at some point, we could, because apparently that connects the two.
Or I force you to buy VR, one of the two.
I'd rather do that. I'd rather that you do it. You have the better card.
Yeah, I need to do a card. Well,
so do I.
I think that wraps us up for today. So I think I'm going to wrap this up for today. So thank you all for stopping through to listen here at DuoQueue. If you think we might have glossed over something big or might need to expand on something, feel free to say so in the comments. Also, please leave us a like and a comment if needed. And then also, don't forget to see us next time. And while you're waiting for a party or searching for a lobby, tune in again. And we can't wait to see you.
All right, Sia, sorry, I forgot I have to deliver the milk.